Just before the video begins, I hope you guys appreciate the video. It took about 2 hours to actually record everything overall. It's now condensed down to about an hour and 20 minutes, and that was about 4 to 5 hours of editing. So yeah, take from it what you will, and hope you enjoy the video. Have a good one.
Hello and welcome to a more serious video on the channel, but I don't want it to be primarily just like serious, like downtone most of the video. This video is going to be called my experience with depression, but like mainly I want to talk about what I did during those times to help myself get out of the area of my life where I was depressed and that sort of thing, or at least like the couple moments in my life when I was. The main thing that I do want to stress in this video is the only reason why I'm talking about how I've experienced things is because I want everyone to understand like that realistically everyone has dealt with things. I do stand by, there's a quote by David Goggins where he basically talks about how if you think you have a problem bad in life, all you have to do is throw a stone at 100 people, probably hit someone who has something equally as bad as you that you're dealing with, or worse. So don't ever feel like that your situation is literally the worst anything could ever be. There is probably a high chance that there could be worse situations that there can be. I know that can sound very undermining to how you feel right now and that sort of thing. However, generally speaking, as human beings, we think in moments when we're upset and angry that this is the worst and nobody else can ever relate to us, which is simply just incorrect. It does feel like that, however, it's not a valid argument, especially once you get out of those points in life. So I want to basically go over what I had happen to me that caused me to be in a more depressed time in my life, what I did that helped me get out of that, and overall why currently I'm very aware of when I'm starting to slip back in. So yeah, with that being said, I'm going to begin with just my backstory of the whole situation. So just before I get into like the actual primary area of my life where I was depressed, I'll just go over a little bit of my childhood, everything like that. I had a very good childhood overall, very pretty much well off everything. My parents weren't rich or anything like that, it's just that both of them worked a lot, so pretty much me and my siblings were able to pretty much get most of the things we wanted most of the time, or at least when I was younger, because once I was born I basically got pretty much everything I wanted. I openly admit that to people because I know that people do find it annoying when that happens for people. So I do know what it is like to pretty much get everything you want, and that is a very big issue towards later on of what I'm going to talk about. So in regards to everything, the closest thing to like the start of everything, I guess, would be when I was about in year 5, so I believe the ages of about 10 to 11, I think. I had an Xbox 360 bought for me, which was the first time I was playing online games. And at that point I got very addicted to them, which is when I gained mass weight. When I was younger I used to do loads of sports, everything like that, and then once I got an Xbox I kind of stopped doing all that and I gained a lot of weight. And then generally speaking throughout school I never really enjoyed it too much. There were certain subjects that I did enjoy, which was mainly just history, maths. Media studies was okay, but generally speaking I wouldn't say it was like I loved being in every single lesson of it. So yeah, basically I would say that overall my school experience wasn't amazing. I didn't get bullied or anything like that. It's just the case of I just didn't enjoy school itself, like the actual subjects that we were being taught. And as well as that, I have dyslexia, so I was struggling with stuff like reading and everything like that, and my school just didn't give me any assistance with that. So all of this accumulated to basically finishing school with borderline no GCSEs and or literally 0. At the time when I finished I had 2. I then had to retake my maths at college, and I still don't have an English GCSE, and I'm 19 years of age. So yeah, that gives you a little bit of an idea of how many I actually have. Yeah, the beginning of kind of the downward slope into the first like main area of my life when I was starting to feel more and more depressed. So the first stage was basically when I started college, which was 2018. I started college and I was doing 3 days a week, and then I started work at the same time as well, and I was doing that part-time. I decided to do 4 days a week of work, 3 days a week of college, which basically meant I had 0 days off ever. my college days would start, the actual college session would be from 9 until 4:30, 2 days a week, and then 9 until 1 on 1 day a week. And then my when it comes to actually getting to college, it took about an hour and a half either way. So pretty much I would have to leave home at about 7 and I wasn't back home until about 6. Basically just meant that overall I didn't have a very a much time to myself during the day. It was primarily just in and out all the time. I lived 30 minutes away from where I worked at the time. So basically that was like an hour's drive either way, no matter what. And my shifts were between 8 to 10 hours long, pretty much. And especially when I was beginning, because of the time of year that it was, I was made to work more days than that was actually required. So I would literally either miss stuff like college to go to work, or the moment I finished college, I'd go to work, which basically meant I had no time to myself ever. It ended up getting to the point where I was pretty much not able to do anything besides about 30 minutes of watching YouTube before I'd fall asleep. I had zero energy. I was not enjoying life at all. I finished the course within literally the first 2 months. 2 to 3 months, I think. I then dropped out of it in February. Basically, I got the email then later on in the year saying that I've passed, everything like that. But it's the case of I dropped out because I was not able to deal with it anymore. And my choices in front of me was either I have to cut down days at work or cut down college. So the reason why I didn't want to cut down days at work was, if all honesty is there, it's probably because one, I enjoyed work more than I did college. The second reason would be that overall, when I was working, because I was earning a fair bit for my age, that probably did jump in as well, because it meant that I was earning more money than pretty much everyone else my age. At the time, I was earning about £1,000 to £1,150 a month, pretty much every single month, which for most people my age was was tons of money. When you consider I was 16, within the first 2 months of work, I built my PC. And that's something that, when it comes to my happiness spectrum of getting things, like I mentioned, I've basically always got what I wanted. That was the last thing, besides, I believe, pretty much like my suit that I bought and I genuinely felt happiness from. Maybe my most recent watch that I decided to buy, that's something that I actually do like and enjoy. But my PC was the last thing that I actually bought and it gave me some form of joy or happiness from. But yeah. Around the same time, just before I decided to quit college, my parents realized that I was definitely not in the correct mindset at all, or at least in the correct headspace. And they basically were like, you know what, we're going to go on holiday. Growing up, literally for me, I've left the UK 1 day out of every single day I'd ever lived at that point of time. Came back because basically there was an issue family-wise for the reason why we were out there, so we came back. But in regards to actually going out, we went to an island in Spain for a week, which was really nice because I've hardly ever left the UK, and by hardly ever, I mean, like I said, 1 day. And basically, it was kind of like a refreshing, nice bit of time away, that sort of thing, and I kind of got a bit of time to myself to think about, okay, I need to make a decision here. What is best for me, not what is best for other people, including work, including my parents, including anyone around me. It's always down to what I need to do. Now, this bit might sound a bit random, that's a bit thrown in there. Around the same time, I started to get into K-pop, and there's a reason why I bring this up, is because overall, I'd say personality-wise, I can get very addicted to things. I will stay on something for an entire course of a month straight, and then I'll be like, okay, cool, I'm now done, I'm on to the next thing. And that's something that kind of repeats throughout my life all the time, no matter what it is, no matter what hobby it is, nothing. I just do that on repeat over and over again. It's really hard for things for me to stick for a very long period of time. But basically, at the time, I was really, I literally hated everything. And for me personally, I'm someone who never has had to deal with the proper actual thought of wanting to kill myself. So it's not something that I've ended up really having to deal with. So if you guys are at that point, then yeah, you definitely need to 100% seek help. But it's the case of for me, I was just literally hating everything. It wasn't the case that there's an NF lyric that I really like, which is the idea of, I don't want to die, I just want to get relief, which is something that I really think is true for most people. Purely because like it's not that you want to necessarily like obviously die, it's the case that you just want to be at peace and enjoy your life for a change. But the reason why I mentioned K-pop is because at the time it was something that I knew nothing about, so it gave me a lot of time that any time that I was not working, I was literally just doing this over it. I was just watching K-pop videos. I was just getting more and more into like basically like fandom stuff, and I was getting more and more into it, and it was kind of giving me like, for the first time since getting into games when I was younger, a sense of breaking out of reality that I really needed, especially at the time, which is why even to this day I listen to K-pop. I still enjoy taking in some of the information that goes around with it, because it's literally just a pure way of getting out of my own head, as it's not something that I usually do all the time. But also around about this same time as like basically starting to consider quitting college and that sort of thing, games for me became like a less pleasurable experience and more stressful. I'm someone who has always got very angry at games, so I will rage a lot, that sort of thing. I don't do it anywhere near as much as I do now in comparison to when I was younger, but it got to a point where I literally was just on every game I was playing, give it 30 minutes, and I was basically borderline ready to break my controller. I hated it. I was basically just rage quitting everything, which I don't rage quit games. I will rage, but I never actually quit the game out of anger. By this point, I basically was like, you know what, I need to just stop playing, and that was pretty much the first time in, I would say, 10 years of my life to maybe 12 that I just stopped playing games altogether. And that is one major sign for me overall of like one of the signs that shows that I'm going into depression again. It's something that's very common within it, which is if you start to lose interest in your actual hobbies and things you enjoy doing, then you could be going down the route of being depressed. So when I turned 17, that's when I actually officially became a full-time member of staff at where I worked, which was decent for me. It meant that I had 2 days off. However, those 2 days really still weren't nothing really, because I was doing like 8 to like 11-hour shifts every single day. That wasn't those 2 days off, and those 2 days I was just tired. I wanted to sleep all day. If I wasn't sleeping, then I would basically be sat watching YouTube until I fell asleep, and it would just be that on repeat for multiple weeks on end. And eventually I was like, you know what, I do need to change something here. So I did start. I tried getting into the gym, which again, I used to do loads of exercise when I was younger, and it didn't stick that time around. However, I did end up feeling a little bit better later on in the year, just because of a trip that me and my friend decided to go on. Well, not go on, but start planning. My friend Josh, who I met over Xbox when playing Destiny, we were like, you know what, screw it, let's go to New York. I, again, had the only time out of the country that I've been by this point was Spain for a week, and it wasn't even main island Spain, it was literally just an island. So yeah, choosing to go to New York was definitely going to be a big jump for me when it comes to it. I'll go over the actual trip in a minute. But yeah, it gave me like a goal to aim towards. So when I was working, I wasn't necessarily working without anything in front of me. I struggle overall trying to give myself goals that will actually help. So yeah, overall this actually did help me quite a lot to just enjoy working more and more, and just be okay with working and earning more money, as I knew that I had a goal, which was I wanted to save up so I could go on this holiday. So like I mentioned, I was more willing to just kind of do more work and that sort of thing. So for example, Black Friday of that year, I worked 65 hours in 1 week. One of my shifts was starting at 4 a.m, finishing at 9 p.m. So yeah, very long shift overall. But it was enjoyable because we were just constantly doing things. So I think that kind of outweighed it overall. I've always enjoyed working, like generally speaking. I don't necessarily hate it. I've never been within the category of people who basically look forward to their days off. I've been someone who will be on their days off and be like, damn, I could be working and earning money right now, but I'm not. So yeah, basically nearing the end of 2019, we booked the tickets to New York and back. And the reason why we did this was basically because it was just guaranteed, like, okay, we've just spent like £800 on tickets. We're definitely going. So at that point, it was like, okay, cool. We're definitely 100% going. We just need to get it all sorted. And yeah, that's where we're going to get into this next bit. So the actual day that we decided to go on was the 8th of March, which was definitely decent, to be fair. We went just before Corona's lockdown started to come into play, and basically when we came back, literally the UK went into lockdown a week later, so that was interesting. But New York basically was not as busy as it usually would be, so we got away with basically being able to do a lot of things and not be stuck in like really close proximity with tons of people, so that was decent, to be fair. But overall, like, it literally only sunk into me that this was properly happening the moment that the guy I was going with, we were in the airport, and it was like I think it was like 4:30, 5 a.m. as our flight had been delayed by an hour, which it was supposed to go at 5, it was then going at 6, and he just said to me, yeah, I'm not going to treat you like my son, so if you don't want to do something, you can walk back to the hotel. I'm not doing everything that you want me to do. I'm not going to expect you to want to come with me for everything I'm doing. So it was just like, do what you want to do when we're there. Don't just do what I want to do, and that sort of thing. And the moment that happened, I literally felt sick to the point where I almost threw up in the toilets at the airport, and it was starting to kick in. The flight there was 8 hours, and I hated every minute of it pretty much. And then got to New York, and it felt really weird because we had gone at 6, we arrived there at 10 a.m, and because of sleep and everything like that, it felt like we kind of gained a day, and it was just really off-putting for the first couple of days. But overall, literally the first few days of being at New York was awful for me, because the longest I'd been away from my family was about 60 miles away from where I live for 4 days. And I was 3,000 miles away from my family for 7. And I was like, oh, okay. If anything goes wrong, I can't rely on my parents, nothing. I was 17 at the time, and I was just like, yeah, I have no clue what's really going on at this point. And yeah, basically the first 3 days in New York, I hardly did anything because I was just homesick as hell. Now, once I realized that basically I only had like 4 days left of the trip, I was kind of like, you know what, I need to just try and enjoy it for the best as I can. And overall, I'd say I did enjoy the trip. As much as I remember the first 3 days of just being in like pure just upset because I was missing people, it then started kicking in, just going like, yeah, just enjoy the experience. And I remember when I came back, I was like, I actually just really wish I was still there for like another week, because I was enjoying just like the fast pacedness of everything. But yeah, overall, I'd say like I was like, the best thing to do if you ever end up in a homesick situation is just try and realize, like, think about it as a sense of how long do you have until you are back somewhere. And if you are going to be back there, let's say in like 2 weeks' time, you need to realize that at the end of the day, you only have 14 days there. 14 days over the entire course of your life is pretty much nothing. So just try and make most of those 14 days that you can anyway, to try and enjoy yourself. Then in the UK, it's the 26th of March. This date for us was us entering lockdown, which was great fun. Basically, the company I worked for was not able to work during lockdown, at least the first one. During the second one, they were able to stay open for click and collect. The third one, they were able to stay open for click and collect, and I will get into the third one later on, as that's probably the worst one out of all of them. But this first one wasn't that bad, and I think for a lot of people, they didn't find the first lockdown that bad in comparison to the second or third one, primarily because the first one was kind of like a random thing, so like people were kind of like, oh, okay, time off work. That's pretty much how they looked at it, so it was like an extended holiday. I ended up playing Animal Crossing for the first 3 weeks, and Warzone, which both came out, I believe, either on the same day or very close to each other, and that made the whole of, like, basically lockdown go pretty well. The first 3 weeks of lockdown, I played Animal Crossing so much to the point where I literally did almost everything you could do at the time in Animal Crossing by those 3 weeks. I was waking up, playing Animal Crossing, going to sleep, waking up, playing Animal Crossing over and over again on repeat. And then basically summer hit. Summer was okay in general, generally speaking. And then on August 24th, I think, yeah, August 24th, I went on holiday with my sister. And we were driving, and we were in York at the time, and this was nearly like halfway through our holiday. It was like 4 days in, and I was like, oh, my throat really hurts, and it's burning right now for some reason. I didn't know what it was, obviously, and I was like, if I feel like this tomorrow, we're going home. And then I still felt like it the next day, so I drove an hour, 6.5 hours straight. Besides, every 45 minutes, we were having to stop to get cold drinks because my throat was burning. The best way of describing it was, imagine eating something extremely spicy, but it's only at one point in the back of your throat, and it's a constant pain. No matter how much you drink to try and cool it down, it's constant. And that was the start of what I eventually found out was glandular fever, which is something I'll go into in a second, of the whole experience of that. But overall, that was like that part of my life. I'd say I wasn't necessarily in a awful headspace. I'd say I was in a better headspace after New York than I was before New York. I was basically starting, I'd say, when it comes to college and all that sort of thing, I was probably at the lowest point I had been in my entire life, then went up again once I started working full time, but I still had no social life, so I basically wasn't doing anything. And then by the time New York happened, and then lockdown, I basically was like, I need to actually just do other things that aren't work related, so I started trying to. And that was basically the start of some of the things that I've ended up being able to keep over the time of being like, okay, these are things that I know work and that help me when I end up being in that depressed state. Just before though, I was starting to get ill. I did start reading Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life. I had read before that only a couple books. So I had read Ramit Sethi's I'll Teach You to Be Rich, Hard Times Create Strong Men, and basically, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. And besides that, those were the only books I'd read prior to that. So I was starting to read 12 Rules, and I really like basically every single rule in that and Beyond Order, both books that I will go into in a minute. But basically, I started reading and I got about halfway through, and then I was ill. The best way of going through how I was ill is pretty much saying that I don't remember about a month and a half to 2 months of my life, because I literally was in and out all the time. So once I came back, for 2 weeks, I was unable to start eating. Pretty much I slowly was not able to eat things, and I was pretty much unable to drink anything hot. I was having to only drink cold drinks to try and keep my throat from not feeling like it was burning. I was sweating so much to the point where my bedding was having to be changed. I was physically unable to do any of this, by the way, so my body just was stopping, so I wasn't able to eat nothing. I went from 11 stone down to 8.5. So yeah, if you want to do the maths for that, I'll do it on screen maybe of how much that is in kg. But yeah, lost a lot of weight, was able to pretty much not be able to do anything. And then when it comes to by that time, I was having to have the bed changed out 3 times a day. I was sweating through the bedding that much. My temperature was just ridiculous. I was unable to do pretty much anything by the point of that I needed to go to hospital. The first 2 weeks they were telling me it was, this is the GPs in England, they were just saying, oh, it is just tonsillitis, it's not anything else, it's nothing that serious. 2 weeks went by, they prescribed me tablets that on repeated multiple times I told them I can't swallow because they weren't going down. My tonsils had flared up. Yes, I technically did have tonsillitis, as well as glandular fever, but tonsillitis is part of glandular fever as well. It got to the point where my throat was so closed up that I couldn't swallow tablets. So all I was able to do was take in liquid at that point. I went downstairs and I was like, yeah, I need to go to hospital at this point. I'm not able to do anything. And I went into hospital after 2 weeks because my GP was like, we need to see you. They were like, oh, you have stage 4 tonsillitis, which if you guys don't know what that looks like, imagine the back of your throat being pure white and not being able to eat or pretty much drink most things. That is what stage 4 tonsillitis is like. It's not great fun. After that, I was in hospital for about 3 days. They then let me out of hospital. This point, they had put me on morphine, 2 other painkillers, and a steroid. The steroid was to help my immune system actually start functioning again. By this point, I was like, I looked overall a lot better than I did when I went in. When I went in, my face was so pale to the point where it matched my bed sheets that I was in hospital, which hospital bed sheets are literally just pure white. That's it. And because of that, I obviously looked dreadful. After about 3 days, I looked better, and they were like, we're going to send you home. Here's all this and this and this. Go home. Within 12 hours, I was unable to do anything again. My temperature rose, everything, all back again. So I had to go into hospital again. which the first time they didn't check me for COVID, which was interesting. The second time they did, but the second time I was there waiting in A&E. They had started checking me. It took them 8 hours to even give me any form of painkillers, which was very annoying, because I was in a lot of pain at that point. And by the end of it, by the end of actually leaving hospital, everything like that, I was in and out of sleep for about a month and a half. When I say that, as in I was not able to get more than an hour and a half sleep in one hit without waking up again. So I would normally go to sleep for an hour and a half, wake up, be awake for about half an hour to an hour, do this on repeat for literally a month and a half to 2 months. That's why that month just went by and I don't remember pretty much any of it. It wasn't until the end of me starting to feel better that I was doing a phased return to work, where it was not that great for me, because I was still dealing with being ill. And then as well as that, I started playing through Spider-Man, which was interesting because it was a game I hadn't played before. I was like, you know what, I'm going to start playing it, and that's the reason why I had to replay it properly a little bit more, at least before I made my Spider-Man video, because I literally was still in and out of being ill. So I was like, yeah, I don't remember everything that happened. But overall, that's pretty much my experience of being ill. Now, the side effects of being ill, I would say, was the worst side of it. So before me being ill, the only panic attack I'd ever had in my life was about a month beforehand. That was because I did a run, and at the time I didn't have proper running shoes. I was just using trainers, and basically destroyed the nerves in my feet, and I was unable to walk on like my not bare feet, but like on my flat, on the flat side of my foot. So I was having to walk on the edges of my foot to get anywhere, as I destroyed the nerves in my feet, and I had a panic attack. After that, didn't have a panic attack. Everything was fine. That was the first ever one I had had in my life, and I was like, okay, cool, that's probably a one-off. After being ill, I couldn't deal with customers if they were getting irritated at all. I would just have a panic attack. If I started to get slightly stressed, I would have a panic attack. If my glands, pretty much even to this day, if my glands get really bad and hurt, I will have a panic attack. Purely because of glandular fever. It will come down like the side of my neck here and bulge, and it will start basically imagine the pain of a headache, but it's down by your neck, pulsing upwards, and then it gives you jaw ache, it gives you earache, and it's just that, and it hurts a lot, and that's pretty much what ends up happening all the time. I've only had it reoccur like twice, not properly reoccur, but like start, and then it kind of stops again. So it's not been that bad. It's now been like a year since I was in hospital, so overall not too bad. So yeah, by the time that I'd started to get better though, I had, by the end of 2020 anyway, I'd gone from having 0 panic attacks to I believe 8 or 9 at that point. So that was great fun, and all of those were in the last 2 months pretty much of the year. When it comes to getting better, I started going to the gym, which really helped a lot. Overall, went with my friends. That was really good. And pretty much started to get myself into a routine of just doing things, which for a lot of people who end up going into depression, the main reason for it will be the case that they have 0 routine, which is why a lot of people who, let's say, don't have a job, don't have any form of goal, nothing, will end up depressed because they have nothing to aim on. They have no routine or structure in their life. After being ill, it gave me a lot of help towards just realizing that I need to just kind of live how I want to live. I shouldn't live for other people's standards. Something that I was basically realizing when I went on holiday, the prior time of being basically in depression. But this time it's kind of stuck with me ever since. And at this point, I will only do things if I need to. If I don't need to, then I will only do things that I want to do, because there is no point of doing things that other people want you to do. Unless it's like a very small thing, then sure. But if it's like actually something that's going to affect your life quite a bit, then yeah, don't just take what everyone else is telling you to do all the time. But overall, I basically started to take that on a bit more. I finished reading 12 Rules for Life, a book that I want to reread because I don't remember most of it because I was basically in and out of being ill still. But then during me being ill, I convinced my parents to get a dog, which was a Chow Chow. Named Eddie. He was a white Chow Chow. We got him, I think, in October. It was like mid-October. And I was getting better, everything like that. Life was going well at this point, generally speaking, or as good as it could be at that time. And then I started reading Can't Help Me by David Goggins. Can't Hurt Me, sorry. And then pretty much halfway through December, we stopped going to the gym because we were going to start up later on after December. And after that, pretty much I didn't go to the gym for like 4 or 5 months. Reason why, so first reason was on the 16th of December, we had to take Eddie in to have himself looked at because he was basically like, his facial features, you could tell there was something wrong. He had like loads of like black stuff on his fur that shouldn't have been there, that sort of thing. We took him into the vets, and they basically told us he's got kidney failure, which, yeah, it's my automatic emotional response to everything is anger. So when I was having to deal with that, so he was my he's my first official dog I have ever had. He's still the only dog I've ever technically had. He was pretty much, besides like some like times of my dad feeding him, that sort of thing, I was the one who was responsible for him, everything like that. My name was down for him. I was paying out for everything. I was walking him, everything. And that point, I was very upset. I was having to deal with it whilst I was working, everything all in one. I remember basically being called at work. It was about 40 minutes before my shift ended because I was dealing with it all day and I had a panic attack prior. And I'm sat in the manager's office and I get a call just telling me basically my options are take him to a more specialized vet to help with the situation, or at least help his passing, or have him put down right then. And I was like, no, I'm not having my dog put down. Some people will turn around and say, well, you should have had your dog put down because it's not a life to live, blah, 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 blah. I don't give a shit. But my viewpoint was I wanted my dog alive, and whatever we could do, we will try and do. We took him to the correct one that was recommended, spent out all the money for it, and then they basically tried their best as they could. They were a lot more helpful than the previous vet, but overall they tried their best. I will give them that. He passed away on the 3rd of January. So the beginning of the year was awful. Passed away pretty much on the night of the 2nd into the morning of the 3rd. And that's the first time in my life I've ever driven to work or done anything and not been in the mood at all for music, which might sound just odd or something like that. But for people who do listen to music a lot, who can't really imagine doing certain activities without it, I literally just had no mood to even listen to it. I didn't want to do it. I was fine with silence at that point. I went into work the same day as him dying. My manager tried helping, cheering me up, that sort of thing. I pretty much just buried myself in work. I took every single day I could. I accepted working full time. I didn't care anymore. And yeah, during that point of time, I basically was reading still, everything like that. But yeah, that was probably the bit that just hit worse, because I basically had, for the first time in my life, something that I wanted taken from me. And like I said, I've had everything my entire life, pretty much. And when this happened, it was the first time in my life that something that I actually truly cared about was just taken from me. And I didn't know how to deal with it. I've never dealt with death at all. Sure, I've had dogs in our family and that sort of thing pass away before, but this was the first time that it was mine. I've never dealt with a family member dying, nothing like that. So I was just angry all the time regarding the situation. Even if I try and think back to it now and think about the whole area, I get angry because my automatic emotional response is just anger. If I start crying over something, I will be red, I will just be angry. I won't just be crying because I am simply upset. Now, the next thing that didn't really help at the time especially was it was January, so I was going to work in the dark, leaving work in the dark. The shop would open for us to do anything at, I believe, 10. So we would get there for 9:30 or 9. We would finish on Sundays, we'd finish at 4, which it was still dark. On Saturdays, we'd finish at 6. Again, it's definitely dark. And then during the beginning part of January, for some reason, they decided to tell us we were opening till 10, which was ridiculous. And it was just freezing cold at that point. But normally we'd be opening till 8. So it was just constant darkness all the time. I read through Can't Help Me, which really did help. It's a book that I would heavily recommend to pretty much anyone. David Goggins is someone who realistically is like the definition of like, realistically, it's kind of crazy to think that he's in the position that he's in now when you consider his entire upbringing, everything, and everything that happens during his life. You'd be surprised with the factor of like, you may think you're in a bad situation. There is a high chance that he was in a lot worse situation than you were in, so you can help yourself get out of that situation. But yeah, after I finished Can't Hurt Me, Jordan Peterson was releasing Beyond Order, which is his second book, which is the more 12 Rules for Life. It's basically, so Beyond Order, and then there's the Antidote to Chaos. Beyond Order is basically the idea of you being structurally pretty much imagine you've got too many boundaries around yourself, what you need to do to help yourself get out of them. Antidote to Chaos is the idea of not having enough boundaries on yourself. So the middle ground is where it's required, which is why one book is white, one book is black as well. So in regards to that, basically the book came out. I'd read the whole lot within the first 16 days of it coming out, which was the fastest I've ever read a book, which for me is a very big accomplishment considering I read really slow. And I read basically, if you also include Matthew McConaughey's book that I finished by the end of March as well, I read 660 pages within 28 days, which for me is something that I've never done before. I probably won't do unless I really try. To this day, I literally struggle reading like 10 pages within like 45 minutes to an hour. So yeah, that will give you some context to how much I was reading. But yeah, Beyond Order is a book that heavily helped my mindset, just overall helped me view the world in a different way, just kind of learn how I want to view things better. It allowed me to have more like intelligent conversations with people, more emotionally intelligent conversations with people, just be able to have more just like in-depth conversation and enjoy it and try and get to the root of why I feel the way I feel and that sort of thing. But yeah, besides that, after pretty much all of this, I would say generally speaking, like there's a few different things that helped primarily. But currently, I'm recording this video with my girlfriend present. She is someone that I've so we've been in a relationship, technically speaking, for 4 months, so we've known each other for 7. Is that correct? 7? Yes. So basically, ever since I've been with her as well, I've obviously been a lot happier. But overall as well in life, just like I've spent more time with my friends than I pretty much have in the past 3 years. In the past 6 months, pretty much. I've gone to the gym and done more exercise than I have recently than I did in the past 3 years again. I've read more than I ever have in the past like year than I ever have. Basically, there's a lot of different things that have helped towards me getting out of how I felt, which is what I'm going to talk about now. Overall, the areas that helped me most when it comes to basically not being depressed or getting myself out of it are the following. Is exercise, reading, writing, playing games, socializing more, and pretty much doing what I want to do. Those are the main things that helped. I will be going into basically each one a bit more in depth primarily. If I end up looking down more than I was just then when it comes to the intro of this, it's because I'm trying to read it so I give you an actual better idea of what I'm talking about. When it comes to the first area, which is exercise, from me starting to recover to basically when Eddie passed, I was going to the gym literally between 4 to 6 times a week, and I was doing pretty much 2 to 4 runs a week, which the gym is something that I'm trying to get more into again now, and running as well. I haven't gone on any runs recently, but I've been going to the gym a bit more recently, and I'm starting to try and build that structure back up for myself for the gym. Overall, when it comes to it, I'd say exercise is one of the key things with getting out of it, pretty much. Besides that, I'd say that one of the key areas, if you do already do this and you stop doing exercise, don't be surprised if you do start to feel just worse about yourself overall. It will happen, probably. So just try and keep it up for as long as you can, and if you need a break, obviously take a break. Try not to burn yourself out of it. But exercise for me was one of the higher areas of just basically enjoying myself, bringing myself out of that state, and just kind of just enjoying life again, for things that weren't related to, let's say, technology and that sort of thing. As obviously you're doing more things that are physical, especially with running. Yeah, sure, I do runs when I listen to music and that sort of thing, so I've still got technology going. I've recently started just doing not recently, but the last time I went on runs, I started doing audiobooks instead, which has been really nice, as it's kind of slows down the pace of everything. Not of the actual run itself, the pace is still the exact same, but just the pace of time feels like it's going a bit slower because it's being read to you instead of a song going. But yeah, overall, I'd say if you are in a depressed state and you either don't do exercise or you did exercise previously, start trying to. If you're overweight, if you're ridiculously skinny, if you're in between, just try and get into exercise the best that you can. Personal preference when it comes to just someone to watch if you want to start learning about exercise. Joey D is a really good starting point for pretty much everything exercise wise. He goes through pretty much most things besides running. He's more into bodybuilding, that sort of thing. So if you are looking to lose weight and that sort of thing, or just build muscle, he's a really good person to watch for that sort of thing. But yeah, pretty much I'd say work on your physical health the most when you are in that state, or at least try to, because when you start working on your physical health, your mental health will follow no matter what. In regards to the people who are depressed and will turn around and say something similar to what I said to myself when it comes to getting into exercise and that sort of thing, it was I don't have time, it's too much, blah blah blah. It's all a lie. Unless literally every second of your life is filled, no matter what, you can find time for exercise. When I say that, I was working full day, 4 days. I was working 5 days a week at the time. I was still able to go to the gym pretty much every day that I was working. I maybe had 1 day when I wasn't working where I didn't go to the gym. I was constantly doing exercise no matter what it was. I would wake up early to go on runs. I would do runs after work. I would do the gym after work. I'd do the gym before work. No matter what, I was doing exercise. And a lot of people will just say they don't have the motivation for it. Motivation is pretty much a just bullshit concept. There is no real thing as motivation, because at the end of the day, if none of this existed, none of the things that can give you motivation, then how would you get things done in the first place? People who need motivation to pretty much do a lot of things need to try and focus on just getting the ball rolling, because the moment you start doing that, you'll actually continuously build that momentum of keeping on going. Pretty much just don't try and rely on motivation to get yourself somewhere, because you won't be able to last. But just before finishing the segment that's about exercise and that sort of thing, if you do decide to get into running, anything like that, do get running shoes. Don't just use trainers. I had a friend recently tell me when he was considering getting into running, and I told him get running shoes, as that's the first thing I tell anyone who ever comes to me about running, is get running shoes. His response to me was, isn't running shoes the biggest scam? No, they are not. They're a lot better to go on. You could even just go for a walk in running shoes and you're going to feel the difference. Get running shoes. Don't just go on runs in trainers. You're going to ruin your nerves. You're going to ruin your feet overall, and you don't want to damage your feet. So in this next session, I'm going to be talking about reading, which may take up a bit bigger of a portion. I don't want to really go proper in depth into all of the books, because I do want to make future videos about them, but also you should read the books. If you don't read that often, or you don't enjoy reading, try Audible. That's probably your best bet. If Jordan Peterson wise, let's say you want to just watch YouTube videos instead, he's got plenty of content out there that is linked to the books, even things that are just straight from the books on video. So if you just prefer watching things, I prefer watching things than I do reading or listening. So if you do prefer watching, then just go watch a video instead. But yeah, first I'll talk about 12 Rules for Life, and then I'll talk about Beyond Order, which is the second book. But yeah, when it comes to Jordan Peterson's first book, which is 12 Rules, the first rule is stand up straight with your shoulders back, which this first rule is, if you want to take it for its full context, it literally just means stand up straight with your shoulders back. Literally just do this. That's what it's telling you. If you want to look at it into its actual context, it is basically about doing and leading. Be the person that you want to be instead, and pretty much take on the most responsibility that you can find, because that's how you're going to find meaning in life. Overall, that's the best way of summarizing the first chapter of this book. The second rule is treat yourself like someone you're responsible for helping. This rule is one of like the obvious ones that you can basically state. Pretty much, if you're in a situation, let's say like I was with depression, I definitely was like thinking about with when people like talk to me about them being depressed or them being like just feeling down, all that sort of thing. I would tell them, just go to the gym, go do this, go do that, try this. But I wasn't trying any of it myself. So you need to start trying to do things that you would recommend other people in your position to be doing. Think about if you just write down on a piece of paper some things of, let's say someone's depressed and you're depressed as well. What would you recommend them do to get out of their situation? And are you doing all these things? And if you are you doing them all correctly? And if that's still not working, what else could you be trying? So for example, I've got written down on here is stuff like on here, are you doing what you would recommend for people? If you're depressed right now, what would you recommend to a depressed person? Like I just mentioned, would you recommend them go to a therapist? Maybe. Would you recommend them to go to the gym? Maybe you'll tell them to go out and socialize more. What would you recommend them to do? Socializing is probably one of the best ones overall if you want to start. Gym will be a little bit harder to get into, all that sort of thing. And a therapist, some people just simply may not want to go to a therapist. But at least going to one will allow you to see from another person's perspective, that is a non-biased perspective of your life, what their view of it is and how they would operate if they were you. The third rule is make friends with people who want the best for you. This rule again is one that's very simple to understand. Make friends with people who you actually care about, who care about you. If they're not willing to listen to you, then you just shouldn't be their friend. It's as simple as that. If you're telling them something and they're not taking it in at all, then honestly, they aren't worth your time. If they only take in your information when it suits them, then it's not really a proper relationship. And it may be hard to actually take in that sort of information, that's not the best bet for you. But overall, you are better off finding people who you can communicate with, who will listen to you, and you will listen to them and take in their information, and actually have it on a mutual level instead of dealing with something where you're literally stuck in a friendship where you're giving and they will not give you anything in return. The fourth rule is compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not someone else today. This is a very simple rule, obviously. Don't compare yourself to other people. There is no point, because at the end of the day, you're not going to be like someone else, so don't try and be someone else. If you don't think you're being better than you were yesterday, or you don't think you've improved in some way from yesterday, then maybe try and do steps to try and get yourself to be better. The next rule is don't let your kids do anything that makes you dislike them. This rule I can't really relate to properly, because obviously I'm 19, I don't have kids. So overall, the best way of just rounding up the actual rule itself is just raise your kids how you want someone to be. Raise them to be as good as possible, and raise them to be someone that you don't dislike or resent. Rule 6 is set your house in perfect order before you criticize the world. This rule is basically you can't really complain about other people's lives if your life is not done well. You can't blame other people for how your life is until you get your life sorted. If you're basically saying about how another family, let's say, is worse than your family, even though you have struggles of your own, deal with your struggles, don't concentrate on other people. You can't complain about other people if your life is not in order, and pretty much you can't complain about anything until you've got yourself sorted properly. You need to at least understand where your issues are. Sure, you can complain about some things. The rule isn't meant to be literal, but it's the case of you can't just accept going by life moaning about everything, even though you aren't perfect yourself. Rule 7 is pursue what is meaningful, not expedient. The rule is something that you can only really go into if you try. You have to really think about it. What do you find meaningful to do? What do you enjoy doing? Don't just do things that are expedient. Pretty much don't do things that try and make yourself rich quick. I guess this is probably the best way of putting it in like a consumer culture way. is basically don't try and fast track your life into things that give you happiness right now. Try and do things that are actually meaningful and will give you long lasting happiness instead of just being quickly happy right now. For example, just like, let's say you have to do something. Let's say you want to go to the gym, build up your strength, all that sort of thing. You could easily get as much happiness that you would get from the gym if you decide to either take drugs or, let's say, use social media for like 3 hours straight. You're going to get the same levels hit into you. But the difference is that the gym will make you feel more proud of yourself. You'll find it more meaningful because you're actually doing something that's actually requiring effort instead of something that's just giving you instant gratification and happiness. Rule 8 is tell the truth, or at least don't lie. Again, another one that's very simple on the surface. It is just basically saying you can't go by life falsifying reality, so don't lie, just tell the truth. Try your best to anyway. If you tell a lie, you were unknowingly let's say you tell a lie and it wasn't known that it was a lie, then you aren't really telling a lie. You're just kind of telling a partial lie that you're not aware of yet. The reason why it says tell the truth or at least don't lie is because you 100% don't know what the truth is, so you can't necessarily tell the truth. You basically need to just not lie. You need to not lie on purpose. Rule 9 is assume the person you're talking to might know something you don't. Basically, this rule is the idea of just not just listening and waiting to respond, listening and actually listening. A lot of people listen to respond. I do this a lot as well. It's something that you really have to work on, is listening to listen instead of listening to respond. Listening to respond is what we mostly do, which is, for example, what happens when you have political debates and when you have debates with just family members and that sort of thing. You're waiting to respond to catch them off. You don't really take in what they're saying because realistically you think you've already won. Rule 10 is to be precise in your speech. This one is fairly obvious. Basically, don't try and not think before you're speaking. So think before you speak. That's pretty much what this rule is as a whole. Basically, try and learn to overall be better at thinking before you decide to talk. You'll be a lot more thought out that way. You'll come across more intelligent than you might actually already be. But not only that, you actually will end up gaining a lot of mental clarity when it comes to how you perceive things. It's the reason why a lot of people who get considered great, you will see that when they respond to things, they will take their time. They won't just instantly give you a response straight away. They will take a moment, take in what you've said, analyze it themselves, and then try and give you a proper response. Rule 11 is another one to do with kids. It is do not bother kids whilst they're skateboarding. Basically, the rule itself makes no sense on the surface, same with rule 12. The rule itself is basically talking about how you should let them do things that they may get hurt from, because at the end of the day, you can't protect them forever. They need to experience basically real life. You can't hold them to pretty much protecting them all of their life. And then rule 12 is pet a cat on the street if you encounter one. Basically, what this rule is completely just stupid on the surface of things again. Makes no sense. The rule is about pretty much accepting that suffering is going to happen no matter what happens in life. You might be feeling the way you are now. I felt the way I was back then. I'm going to go through times in life where I will drop down to being the way I was then again. That's something that I'm going to have to accept. The difference is that I'm aware that my life isn't always like that, so I can get back to where I was. And the fact that I exist is more important than suffering. Except that the fact that you exist on basically some random rock floating around in space is a lot more impressive and important than basically suffering and believing life is all awful. This book overall helped me get back on track for a lot of things, such as the gym, socializing more, and just enjoying life and being more precise in how I think. Overall, I would say everyone should read this book. It's only about 300 to 400 pages, I believe. But yeah, basically, try your best if you can to read it, but the main book that I would recommend everyone reads of his is his third book, which is Beyond Order. David Goggins' book, Can't Hurt Me, is another book that I would highly recommend. Anyone who's basically got a victim mentality, which for me, when I was in that state of mind, I definitely did. And I feel like a lot of people do, especially when they are depressed, because they view a lot of things as completely out of their control and it's all just happening to them for no reason. Yes, there is going to be parts of your life that is happening to you for no reason, but there's also going to be other areas of your life where it is happening and you can change things to help yourself. During his book, you'll learn about a lot of things that were completely at odds against him, and that you will actually see that what he did to help himself, things that just keep you kind of in a mindset of, okay, I can improve. His belief is basically find the hardest thing you can possibly find and do it. And that's basically the motto of his entire life. If you look at anything to do with David Goggins, you're going to see that a lot of times, and a lot of what he describes throughout the book is very reminiscent of that point. Rule 1 is do not carelessly degenerate social institutions and creative achievement. This rule as a whole is probably one of the more political rules within his book. It's not really like a full-blown like we're going politics here. It's basically talking about how in life itself you've got the structures around you and the creativity, and pretty much how it's viewed upon. Creativity is what's considered more left. Social institutions that are concrete and founded is considered more right. Basically saying that life itself is finding the balance between the two, as you don't want to be too constrained to the point where your creativity doesn't exist, but you don't want to have so much freedom to the point where you can't be creative because there isn't any structure around you. Rule 2 is imagine who you could be and aim single-mindedly at that. This rule is very obvious, which is probably one of the better rules in the entire lot that's come out so far. Overall, this rule is pretty much about writing down an idea of who do you want to be. What type of person do you want to be when it comes to your family, when it comes to your life, job, whatever? Who do you want to be? And attempt to aim at it as much as you can. It isn't about making an overnight change to become the person that you want to be, because at that point you're then not being the person you want to be, because you're effectively putting on a mask for that. You want to pretty much, over time, try and build yourself to a point where you are the person that you want to be. Rule 3 is do not hide unwanted things in the fog. Now this rule is a kind of just like, it's obvious once you read it, but it's kind of like a, why are you writing it like this? Now this rule itself is basically just saying, if you have anything on your mind, just say it. Don't hide away from it. If you have something that you have an issue with, talk about it. You don't need to shy away from talking about it. And basically a lot of his points go through what he's kind of had to deal with through clinical psychology and that sort of thing when he's had clients. So it's actually really just informative as well as interesting overall. Rule 4 is notice that opportunity lurks where responsibility has been abdicated. This rule is pretty much if I was to say like you're going to read something that kind of summarizes David Goggins in a nutshell, I'd say this rule does it pretty well. The rule itself is basically find the hardest thing or find the biggest amount of responsibility you possibly can in life, carry it, and just try. The idea of it is basically saying that your way of finding meaning in life will be through responsibility. It won't be from trying to shy away from responsibility, so you should just go for it, find the heaviest thing around you, and take it. Rule 5 is not to do what you hate. This rule is pretty obvious, however what it goes into is the idea of talking to yourself pretty much about what do you want to do in the short term, in the long term, and overall what do you want out of life. This rule is something that did help me when it comes to just wanting to do stuff like this, for example, which is just making videos. At the end of the day, I want to do this sort of thing, so I've now just said screw it, I'm just going for it, might as well, what's the point of not? So the whole idea of the book is pretty much going over, well not the book, but this chapter in particular, is how life itself is about you, or at least your life is, until you have to actually take on the responsibility of another human, which is obviously your kids. But the idea of it is pretty much try and do what you want to do. Don't do what other people want you to do. Rule 6 is one that really helped me personally. It is the second, probably most political chapter that you're going to find in the whole of all 24 rules. The rule itself is just called Abandon Ideology. The idea of it is basically that if you're in an ideology or stuck within one, then there is a high chance that you don't have any personality that's not part of the ideology. And pretty much like it made me see a lot of like how I was when it comes to like wanting to get into political discussion, everything like that, and me just kind of only single-mindedly believing one side and never considering the other. Ever since I read this chapter and kind of understood it a bit more, I've been more willing to try and learn from what is the other side. of what I would consider not the same point of view as mine. It really did help personally, and I think that it is something that a lot of people, especially today, with the amount of division that there is politically, could deal with actually reading. Rule 7 is work as hard as you can on one thing and see what happens. This rule is something that is very obvious just off the gate of what it means, but it is primarily also talking about things like floating in life. A lot of people deal with this, I'd say most people, and it's just something that we all have to deal with, from pretty much leaving school to going to, let's say, like your big, like early 30s, of what you see with people who still don't know what they want to do, is that you float between things until you kind of hope that eventually you fall into something. And the idea of it is talking about, what do you want to do? And you need to really sit down and think to yourself of, what are my options? What do I want to do with my life? What do I want to see myself as in the future? And try and aim single-mindedly at that and become as good as you can. It's something that really did help me as well, and it's something that, again, is another big thing for me when it comes to starting this channel, is that I want to make this work for myself. So it is something that I am trying to put in as much effort as I can into making videos that are actually somewhat decent, at least as best as I can currently, until I learn and develop to be better. Rule 8 is to make one room in your house as beautiful as possible. Now, this rule doesn't actually primarily focus on what it kind of is named after. It mainly focuses on like musical and artwork, as he's someone who has dealt with a lot of different types of artwork in the past, and the artwork that's within the book as well is actually really, like, just overall very good illustrations of each chapter, and have been done really well. And overall, I'd say that this rule is something that I do still try to do as best as I can, and I want to do, especially in, let's say, the coming year, of wanting to make my room look as best as it can and keep it in that best condition as I can until eventually I get my own house. And that's kind of the goal. And with a room that is your favorite room, like the room that is the best looking room that you can possibly have, you will feel better because it's something that is yours, and it will be something that you will actually take pride in. Rule 9 is, if old memories still upset you, write them down carefully and completely. This rule is something that a lot of people, especially if you are in a depressed state overall, have to deal with. This is why, for example, I do journal. I like trying to write down my thoughts and understand why I'm thinking the way I am. It also allows me to eventually go back to that and see it for myself. Overall, I would probably say pretty much the best way of going about getting out of your situation will be writing down your thoughts. It will give you an idea to how you view yourself. Do you really think the things that you're actually thinking? Because at times when you are depressed or sad, you can write down things and believe things that are just simply just not true, just because your brain thinks that they are at that moment. Rule 10 is plan and work diligently on keeping the romance within your relationship. This rule itself is pretty much talking about how a lot of relationships can be a tyrant and slave sort of issue, where you have one that is a lot more overbearing and more in power than the other. So the one who is basically the slave in this opinion is pretty much just being pushed around all the time, not doing what they want to do. They're always having to do what the tyrant wants them to do all the time. It's something that I definitely try my best to practice personally, as I don't want to be in a situation where, let's say, I'm simply only doing things that I want to do, or only doing things that my girlfriend wants me to do. It's a middle ground that you need to meet and try and keep your relationship as stable as you can. Rule 11 and 12 were the primary rules overall within this book that really helped me. Both are my favorite rules out of all 24. If I was to advise anyone to read any of the rules or any pages overall in like books, I would definitely recommend these. I think it's about 40 pages to maybe 50 pages overall between these two chapters, and they are both amazing chapters. They go into so much depth about life itself, and it's something that I truly do think that could help a lot of people. Rule 11 is, do not allow yourself to become resentful, deceitful, or arrogant. This rule is something that really did help me personally, as I'm someone who definitely does fall prey to all three of these. I think everyone does at the end of the day. But when it comes to it, I would say that resentful is something that I have dealt with in the past. I don't really deal with it now. I kind of don't care enough. to be resentful of things or resent other people. I think that resenting other people is just a level of energy that you don't need to really waste, which could be used upon doing something better for yourself. Deceitful, I would say, is again kind of within the same grasp of resentful. Deceitful, I would say, is kind of just the next step. Because I don't let myself become resentful, I kind of don't have to deal with being deceitful, and I don't try and deceive people. At least to the best of my knowledge, I don't go out of my way to deceive people. And the last one is arrogance, and arrogance is something that I definitely have dealt with before. Overall, I would say that over the past year, I've tried working on that a lot more ever since I was ill. I'd say that I'm no longer as arrogant as I used to be. I don't try to openly just impose my opinions upon other people. I try to kind of explain how I'm thinking and just explain it as best as I can. I find that I used to definitely just be like, yep, you're just straight up stupid for believing something that I don't believe in. But I've hit a point now where I don't like to believe that one person knows 100% of what's definitely going on. And I find that that's definitely helped me when it comes to viewing the world and viewing different parts of the world. And generally speaking, I'd say I'm definitely happier because of it, because I no longer care enough to deal with stuff like political issues to a mass degree anyway, and I kind of just stay away from things that would basically make me any form of resentful, deceitful, or arrogance. Rule 12 is to be grateful in spite of your suffering. This is something that will definitely help people who are depressed, because overall you are suffering, as that is pretty much what depression would be. You are suffering under the bearings of your own mind, and because of that, you can end up becoming just resentful and just hating everything. And pretty much you need to accept that this is happening, and you need to be grateful within your suffering. And what this means is basically, when he's talking about it, is be grateful for the people you have around you, because that's something you can lose when you aren't being grateful. Be grateful for the world that you live within, the society you live within, the actual time period that you live within, because we're at the point of time right now which is the best time in human history. So no matter what, you may have issues with how the world is, or have issues with how your family members are, and have issues with just different things. But at the end of the day, you should be grateful that you live now and that you are alive in the time that you are alive in. Because this is the best time in human history. It's the best time overall for just everything, connection, technology, overall advancements, everything. And because of that, we should be grateful in the world that we live in and how basically happy we can make ourselves. And the fact that we're now at a point where we can just turn around and say, I want to focus on making myself happy first, and then other people happy second. Rule 11 is probably my favorite chapter in the whole book. However, I'd say Rule 12 is probably the best written chapter in the whole book. It goes over a lot of stuff, and it's a chapter that kind of goes past really quick because it's never really as dull as some of the other ones can be. With a lot of his writing, you can definitely say that it can become a bit dull at times, but this book is definitely a lot more easier to read than, let's say, the first one, or even his original book, Maps of Meaning. Now, the next book that I want to talk about is Matthew McConaughey's Green Lights. This book, I'd say, is a very good blend between an autobiography and a self-help book. Overall, it very much meshes really well with a few different areas that he talks about. The first thing that I'd probably say that you'll notice about the book as a whole is that you're probably going to have a different view upon some things in life and not believe that your life is there just for working. He talks about quite a bit, because obviously he's in a position that a lot of other people wouldn't be, where he can just go off and adventure in different places. But I do think, ever since I've read that book overall, that I've had a changed perception of the idea of basically living and trying to live and have a solid job. I would rather live for the actual moments and enjoy being able to go places. I don't want to be always in England all the time. I do want to explore the world. I do want to see other cultures, everything like that, see other areas of the world that isn't just my own. And overall, I'd say this book is definitely a really good read for people who want to just basically think about what do they want out of life, how do they want to be throughout life, as he covers pretty much everything from him being the ages of, like, I think the first few chapters in the book, he talks from like him basically being like really, really young, like between the ages of like 7 to 10, all the way through to how he is now. And overall, it's a really good book, definitely a good read. And if you have Audible, I would heavily recommend reading it and listening to the audio version, because the audio version, you get his voice, and that's just like, it works really well for the overall like tone of the book. But with the book as well, you'll be able to see all the images, everything like that he's referring to. So yeah, I definitely recommend Green Lights 100%. Now, besides reading, the other area of my life that's really helped has been writing. This isn't just things like journaling, which if you want to see a kind of better drawn out version of what I talk about within journaling and kind of how I view journaling to help me, I'd heavily recommend just watching my video called Why I Journal. It goes over that pretty much of why I like it. The summary of it, I would say, is basically I journal because it's having a conversation with yourself at its best way that's not in your head. In your head, you can think about a lot of things, and a lot of things come out of your mind, and a lot of thoughts that you think are valid aren't actually valid, and you need to really just think and write it down, because then you'll have it there forever to remember of, oh, I was thinking to myself at one point that I was like this, and now I'm like this. And it shows you growth. It's not just an idea of being like, oh, I'm the same person. Through writing, you'll see basically yourself changing, how you are mentally, physically, everything throughout writing. And like I said, though, it's not just journaling that I did that's really helped me with this. I have also just kind of like written just other things in general. For example, after I was ill and I was recovering, I wrote 55,000 words within 30 to 45 days, something like that, of something that I do want to work on more. However, I think I'm going to basically scrap almost all of it and try and take some areas of it and put it into what I want to talk about properly. But yeah, basically, like overall, it's given me more of a way to express myself that's been a more thought out process of trying to understand my own thoughts, views, and just overall perspective on life. Through journaling, though, I'd say that if you are depressed, anything like that, depressed, anxious, whatever, no matter, even if you're not, I would say journal. It'll give you a lot more of a better understanding about how you are, how your brain is working, everything from a bird's eye perspective that isn't going to stop you from trying to find out what is a better way of approaching things in life. Gaming is another big area within my life overall, which is hence why the mass majority of these videos on this channel is going to be gaming content. Overall, I'd say that the first pillar of knowing when I am starting to get depressed is when I stop caring about wanting to play games. Either that or just the happiness, well, just not being happy from playing games. That will be what kicks in. I'm someone who, like I mentioned earlier in the video, that gets annoyed at games easily, but when I am enjoying them and I'm actually happy and content within myself, I rarely do actually get annoyed. So I can tell when I'm starting to go down that slope of not feeling like myself, primarily because I'll stop doing things like playing games, which is a very big part of my life. I've been playing games since I can remember, from things that are just on the DS, the Wii, the PlayStation 1, 2, everything. And because of that, I'd say that if I was to say that like I could do one thing just to enjoy entertainment from, it would be playing games. I would rather play games than sit and watch YouTube personally. It's something that keeps me more grounded, everything like that, and it allows me just to find moments of just thought that I wouldn't have thought about beforehand, because I'm kind of just there doing something that's taking my mind off of everything. And when you have your mind taken off of things, the things that break through and catch your attention are things that are probably of more importance. Things like, for me personally, like ideas for writing, ideas for photos, ideas for YouTube videos, ideas for just life in general, about what I want to think about. All these things come when I'm playing games, or when I am running, when I am cycling, anything that takes my mind off of other things and stops my mind from having to like hyper-analyze everything all the time around me. I'm then able to think more clearly, and that's kind of how I use games a lot nowadays. and I'm happy that that's kind of the point that I'm at now. Now, the second to last area before I get into exercise is socializing. For me personally, I would say that socializing was one of the key ways of getting myself to become better overall within myself, everything in general. If you aren't socializing and you are depressed or anything really, if you are just sad in general, try going out and socializing with people. Try going out with your friends. Do all these things, because at the end of the day, you need to try and get yourself with people, because we are social creatures. We need to be socially active to an extent to enjoy ourselves. And we can, yes, sometimes want to be at home and be by ourselves. I'm like that quite a lot. I would rather be by myself than out socializing with other people. But realistically, we do need to socialize, and I enjoy socializing. This can be from anything really simple. Like for me personally, when I was starting to kind of get a bit better, I would go on walks with my friends, just like one-to-one. We'd just talk about stuff. We would go to the driving range, just, you know, mess around with golf, even though not that great at it. We just kind of mess around with it. It could be from that to going to the gym, as I'm someone who prefers going to the gym with other people. But it allowed me kind of just to get back into it and everything like that with other people before I start going by myself. Overall, I would say that if you aren't socializing, just try to. For me as well, personally, another area which kind of links in with socializing, obviously, would be like a relationship, which personally for me has really helped me, because it gave me someone to kind of just confide in and talk to about anything. So it worked out pretty well for me. So yeah, I'm not saying basically go out and try and go for whoever you can. Go out and try and find someone who works for you and is best fitting for you, as it can help you quite a lot. Exercise was a bit that I apparently already covered earlier on, so I'm not going to cover it now. Basically, the last bit of this video, we're talking about kind of how I noticed myself slipping into a depressive state again. And I think it could help other people, but also I think for a lot of people, you will just start to learn over time of things repeating, for when you know you're starting to get into a more depressive state over and over again. Again, I would recommend heavily journaling. It will give you a good idea into how you are, how you examine the world, how you basically can see that you're starting to slip back based off how you are writing, how you're thinking, how you are acting, doing, whatever. All these things can really help you into just learning how to not slip into these moments. So yeah, basically for me, the first things really to slip will be stuff like playing games, like I said, playing games, going to the gym, running, all that sort of thing. Not socializing is pretty much like the last pillar before it's basically like I sink myself into just doing stuff. So once that kind of hits, then I know I'm there. I can't see that happening properly right now, but overall, I'd say that I've got a fairly good life now, and if you want to learn how to actually like see when you're starting to fall into depressive states again, write down things throughout your life. It's not going to be something that you're going to learn just by going, oh, I know off the top of my head, I do this and this and this when I start to get depressed. It's something that you need to just learn by yourself. It will take time, everything like that. You're going to have to go through life and deal with the things that come at you. Like the David Goggins quote, which is, you can throw a rock into a crowd of 100 and find someone with something worse than you or on the same level as you. That is pretty much the belief that you need to have throughout life, is that at the end of the day, you are going through things, and other people are going through things as well. It's not just you, and it's something that we struggle with as human beings, to understand that other people's lives are as complex as ours. We just kind of look at other people and go, you clearly can't have a hard enough life. You can't have a life that's harder than mine. Which is something that's just completely false, and we need to accept that everyone has life issues, and overall we need to grow and learn about ourselves and who we can be. So yeah, I hope this video was helpful overall. Primary reason for making it, like I said, was just kind of like I wanted to talk about this subject and make it a proper, more in-depth video of what worked for me, everything like that. So if you guys do find it helpful at all, just leave a like, and then if you have anything like ideas that you want to openly express towards how you know that you're slipping, or things that have helped you in the past with different things, or just overall just life in general, feel free to pop that in the comments, and basically yeah, we can just discuss and other people can see. So yeah, if you guys did enjoy this video, leave a like and subscribe for more content. I would say similar to this, but there probably won't be many videos similar to this one ever uploaded on this channel. I kind of wanted to just make it and have it out there. But yeah, main videos that come out on this channel is gaming content every Friday. And then on Wednesdays is kind of just anything I want, which is where you're seeing this video come up now. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a good one.